Sort of to tie things together, I'd like to ask Mehdi Hasan to give us some insight into whether the media influences political discourse.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I too am very pleased to be sitting behind this podium with the best view of the hall. I'm going to start with a story. Forgive me all if you've heard this story, but George Bush, when he was president, the joke goes that he was holding a big event at the White House, big diplomatic dinner, world leaders from around the world, and a diplomat from a European country, he sees Bush and Tony Blair sitting in the corner, just whispering to each other. So he goes over in the corner, he says, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, everyone's over there, what are you doing here in the corner? What are you whispering about? And they look at each other, and then they look at this guy, they look at the diplomat, and Bush says, we're planning World War III. And the diplomat says, World War III? Wow, that sounds bad. What's it going to involve? And Bush says, we're going to kill 14 million Muslims and one dentist. The diplomat says, one dentist? Why would you kill one dentist? And Bush smiles, he looks at Blair, he said, I told you no one would ask about the Muslims. And the problem is, we live in an age where no one asks about the Muslims. Politicians can say whatever they want in private or in public, and no one asks about the Muslims. And why does no one ask about the Muslims? Why do politicians across Europe, the West, United States, Canada, Australia, why do they think they can say anything they like? Why do they think they can speak about the Muslim community in a way that they would never dream of, never dare of speaking about any other minority community or faith community? Because fundamentally, as Wajahat outlined, as Dahlia mentioned, my profession, my industry, the media, journalists have failed to hold them to account, have failed to call them out in a way they would call them out if they made racist or anti-Semitic or homophobic remarks. When it comes to Islamophobic remarks, journalists are too busy deciding whether it even exists to bother to call out a politician who says something outrageous about a Muslim institution, a Muslim individual, a Muslim act of faith. And so you have this growth now. It's a growth industry. Wajahat mentioned what's happened to the Republican Party. You know, the economist John Kenneth Galbraith, during the Bush presidency, he said, I look at George W. Bush and I yearn for Ronald Reagan. And I look at the current candidates. You look at the Ted Cruz's and the Mike Huckabees and the Donald Trumps, and you yearn for George W. Bush. Because George W. Bush went to a mosque 4 days after 9/11 in Washington, D.C. and said, Islam is peace. I did a debate in Oxford on the same motion, whether Islam is peace, and hundreds of people in Oxford University, liberals, voted no, it's not a religion of peace. So George Bush is better on that issue than a lot of people today, especially in the media industry and especially in the Republican Party. And so you have to ask this question, how will we get to this stage where journalists are not just turning a blind eye to Islamophobic discourse, Islamophobic bigotry, Islamophobic dog whistles from mainstream politicians, people who are running for the most powerful office in the world. They're not just turning a blind eye, but in many cases they're egging them on. They're inciting them. They are inciting Islamophobia and encouraging politicians to get their support, to get the support of their readers and their viewers by engaging in this stuff. And you look at politicians, there are many politicians, you look at their records, you look at someone like Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich, 20 years ago, didn't care about Islam. Newt Gingrich only cared about taxes. Newt Gingrich cared about cutting taxes and cutting the size of government. Today, Newt Gingrich is a man who only compared, he compared Islam to Nazism, I think, during the Ground Zero Mosque. Because they see there are votes in it, they see there are bloggers who will write about them positively, they see that they'll get invited on Fox News. You know more than I do. In the United States, the easiest way, the most obvious way in which the media incites Islamophobia and incites politicians to go down the Muslim bashing route is on cable news, is on Fox News. You only need to look at the underdogs debate. Did anyone see the presidential candidates underdogs debate last month? What was called the kids' table debate, I believe, for those people who didn't make the main cut with the serious candidates like Donald Trump. In the underdogs debate, the Fox News anchor said to the candidates, what would you do to battle radical Islam? How far would you go? Would you monitor mosques? Of course, mosques already are being monitored, as we found in New York. George Pataki, moderate governor of New York State, former moderate governor, not a Tea Party guy. Pataki jumps up and says, I'd shut mosques down. No one asked you to shut them down, George, but he says, I'll shut them down. Fox wants to know if I'm going to monitor them. I'm going to tell Fox, I'm going to shut them down. Would he ever say he would shut down a church or a synagogue without evidence of anything? Would he dream of even thinking it, let alone saying it on a national television platform? Senator Lindsey Graham. How many of you are aware of Senator Lindsey Graham? A man who has never come across a Muslim-majority nation he didn't want to invade, bomb, or occupy with other people's children. Lindsey Graham, a man who recently said, by the way, that anything in the Middle East that starts with ow is bad news. Anything that starts with ow. Algebra. Lindsey Graham says in the Fox News debate, he does this, you can watch it on YouTube, he says this. I don't know if it's a kind of declaration, a kind of pistol. He says, if I have to monitor mosques, I'll monitor mosques. These guys see the discourse. They see what's out there. Wajat mentioned money as well. The money that goes into the Islamophobia industry, the media discourse that promotes it, and the politicians who follow in line. And it's very easy for us to identify this stuff. The bigger issue is, what are we doing to take back that narrative? It's not easy. There are no silver bullets. I shouldn't say the word bullet at a Muslim conference, I apologize. But what are we doing about it? It's very easy to slam Fox News. It's very, very easy to slam Lindsey Graham. But these guys are getting away with their stuff. The Mike Huckabees, the Ted Cruzes, the Bobby Jindals. Oh, Bobby Jindal. A man so proud of his culture and heritage that he used Fair and Lovely for a painting of him when he was governor of his great state. Bobby Jindal, who says that Muslims in my country, the UK, are creating no-go zones. I think Muslims should set up no-idiot zones and keep Bobby Jindal out. But that's a different debate. Why do people like Jindal and Cruz and Huckabee, all these guys, why do they think that they can get away with this stuff? Because there's no countervailing pressure. If you are only pressured from one side, as a politician, you will do that one thing. Where is the countervailing pressure? Not just from Muslims, but from the left, from progressives, from people who care about racial equality. Where is that countervailing pressure where we're willing to stand up and take a stance? Look at what's happening with Trump and the Hispanic community. How many of you saw a couple of days ago peaceful protesters outside that beautiful piece of architecture that is the Trump Tower in Manhattan? Standing, and they got punched by Trump's security guards. And Jorge Ramos, Hispanic journalist, thrown out of a press conference by Trump. Because the Hispanic community saying, we're not going to tolerate this from a guy who wants to be president, who's the leading candidate. And I wonder about us as a Muslim community. Mashallah, you've come out here to Chicago, you've come to ISNA, you come year in, year out. But where is the momentum outside of these halls? Where is it out in the cities and towns and villages, the smaller states, that we can actually say politically we're going to get together and put on some of this pressure? Because we talk about the media discourse. The media discourse is one element. The lobbying element is another element. We Muslims, we know this. You don't need me to tell you this. You come to these conferences, you hear this year in, year out, that these are the areas where we need to up our games. Because the invaluable work that can be done to stop the very dangerous people who are coming down the road. I mean, I've just moved to the United States. You think I want to move back to the UK as soon as Donald Trump becomes president? I don't. It's not easy moving house. But this is a serious threat. These people with their discourses egged on by journalists. Franklin Delano Roosevelt met with a group of labor union leaders in the 1930s during the New Deal era, who said that he wasn't going far enough when it came to workers' rights. And they laid out what they wanted him to do. And FDR responded to this group of labor leaders. He said, I agree with you. I want to do it. Now go and make me do it. Make me do it. Because there are decent politicians out there. Don't buy into that myth that all politicians are the same. Don't buy into that myth that all journalists are the same. There are decent people out there. There are non-bigoted people out there. There are people who don't agree with this toxic discourse. But maybe they're slightly afraid to take a stand. Maybe they think, if I come out as a politician, there are no votes in this. Maybe as a journalist, they think, if I come out and say this, no one's going to read my stuff. We need to be the people who are there giving support to those non-bigoted journalists, to those non-bigoted politicians, and saying, we're here, we've got your back. And you know what? We want to win this battle, we're not going to win it alone. There's no way Muslims are going to win anything on their own. We have to build alliances, and we have to get stuff done by putting the pressure on and making them do it. Thank you very much for your time.